at this point, while we start the discussion, if we want to mute ourselves up until the point when we're asking for questions from the audience, and we will go from there. Robert will also share some pictures of his work and working process of bowl sculptures here. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Robert.
Well, hello. I can't see any of you, so I'm just going to be talking towards Natalie. So I'm Robert Riggs. I've been doing pottery, started in high school, and started coming to Wesleyan Potters, and I think it was about 93 or 94. Started taking some classes, and just you know, stuck with it, and here it is 20-something years later, and still doing it. So you know, I was here, a lot of you may have remembered me from being studio manager here and teaching here. I still teach here on Thursday nights. In high school, you know, I got into sculpting, and it was the reason we only had 2 wheels in our high school, and everybody had to take their turn at the wheel. So every time I came in, you know, you had to do your projects. You had to do your pinch pot and your slab pot, and after coming in and somebody always being at the wheel, I did my project, and then I kind of moved on and I started sculpting. And when I was sculpting, it was just a way for me to not have to worry about somebody being at the wheel, and I could just kind of get into my thing, take it out each week and work on it. And it was great. And so really the last couple of years, junior, senior year, I really kind of just did all sculpting. I never really sat at the wheel much. And I enjoyed it. And then when I came to Wesleyan Potters and started working here, everything was focused around the wheel. You know, there wasn't, when I first came here, there wasn't too many people hand building and stuff. There was like a couple of people at the hand building table, and pretty much everything else was wheel work. And then I took a sculpture class from Pat Simon, and she did this is going back probably 20 years, I guess it was. And this is the first sculpture I did in her class, or her workshop. And it was, I think it was a 3-day workshop. And you could see the difference between the two. 3 days, 8 weeks, 20 years later, right? So, you know, the proportions are kind of off, and you know, so I really, when I did this sculpture, this was this year, I took a class with Emily Albee, and she did a full 8-week sculpting class. So it was 2.5, or actually I think they were 3-hour classes for 8 weeks. So you really could get into it. And I wanted to do the gorilla again because I kind of wanted to redeem myself. You know, after looking at this for 20 years and seeing, oh, geez, I would have done this different and that different, I had to do another. So that's the 2 of them. And so really what I want to talk about is not just the fact that I want to talk about the different techniques that were used in both of these, because they were both done very different, even though they have a lot of the same finishing design here. They're actually both done with iron oxide, an iron oxide wash. So I guess what I'll do is I'll explain kind of how I did this one first, and then I'll explain how I did this one in tell you the difference here. So, so this sculpture, the way we did it in that workshop was we rolled out a slab of clay. And on that slab of clay, it was thick enough to where you could insert dowels into the clay and they would kind of stay up on their own. So what we did is we rolled out the slab, we got dowels that were, I don't know, probably, so big, and put them into the slab and made like a structure,
skeleton
a
almost.
skeleton. Yeah, it was like a, one was coming up through here, one was coming here, one was coming up, and they were sticking right out. One was coming through here, and so then I just kind of built slabs, and I was wrapping the slabs around. Some of these I think were a coil where I ran the rod through there and stuck it in so it stood up on its own, and I wiggled it around to try to open it up a little bit so it had some space. But basically that's all that was holding this up. And the body was a slab, the back, the head. So one of the problems with this was that as I was building it, it was probably a timing thing too, as far as like how many days we had to do it. It kind of started to slump. And you can kind of see in the back here where the whole thing kind of shifted, when I started pulling out the dowels. So the dowels were pulled out, the holes were filled, and but it just wasn't quite dry enough to hold up its own weight, right? And if the slabs were a little big, they're a little thick, it added that extra weight to it. Even the hands here, they were more. It was more on its knuckles, but then it kind of sagged down and pushed down on the hands. But this was a learning process. And the other thing that happened with this, which I found interesting, was a while after it was finished, it started getting stress cracks in it. So you could see the crack here that goes all the way down here. There's another one that kind of starts up behind his ear and runs down the back. It's kind of hard to see, but I don't know if that was stress from part of the construction of it, and that's why it cracked. I'm not quite sure, but it did over time continue to crack, just like a windshield would. You get a little chip in your windshield, starts cracking. Before you know it, a month later, it's all the way across the windshield. So, that was one of the problems. So I kind of handle this with care. It's got a little sentimental value to it. And I don't know, one day it might just fall right in half. I could pick it up. Could be tonight. I might pick this up and it might fall in half. Hopefully it doesn't. So anyway, the iron oxide wash that I put on this was, it was fired in the gas kiln in reduction. So it got a lot of black in it. The clay body, I'm sure was the, I'm not positive, but I think it was the 900, Laguna 900, Miller 900. And so, it's a little difference in color, even though this one was done with iron oxide. This was done in a wood kiln, fired in a wood kiln. This was done with hand building clay, 950, Miller 950. So it's a little, it's got more grog in it. It's a little toasty. So Okay, so on to this one. So I, 20 years later, I decided I'm going to do it again. And the way Emily taught us how to do these sculptures was in a solid piece. So a solid piece of clay, and then you do everything you have to do to it. And the last thing you do is you cut it up. You start cutting this thing into pieces and taking it apart and hollowing out all the pieces and then putting it all back together. So that was experience. So I also did this on a slab of clay, but the clay was more to allow it to shrink at the same rate. So it was, you fire it on the piece of clay when it's bisqued, and in the actually I didn't fire it on the slab in the wood kiln. It was just up on wads of wadding. So this here, let me show you. Where's that board? So the way this was built, this was the board it was built on. You could actually see where the feet were, right? And we built these armatures. So I'll show you, when I show you the pictures later, you'll see that this whole thing was on this threaded pipe. And was it 1/2-inch pipe, I guess? And there was a pipe coming up this way. There was a little T. There was another pipe going this way and this way. Another going this way. And I had dowels coming for the legs. And the same thing here coming off of this, again, piping. And the pipe went up into the head just a little bit. And basically that structure, that metal structure, mounted to this board, made it solid. So this thing wasn't going in, right, while I was working on it. I was able to push on it and mold it and scrape away and take a tool to it, gouge it, and it didn't move. It was solid. So as opposed to when I remember back when I was working on the first one, I kind of had to be careful because it was already hollow. There wasn't really a full arm. It wasn't wrapped around a full armature. It just had these kind of sticks sticking out of it, or the dowel sticking out. So sometimes it would move a little bit, or I'd push on it and push in. And again, slumped a little bit. So, when I went to this, I was like, well, this is really nice. This is nice that I can push on this and build it all in one solid piece and not have to worry about slumping or moving. I was actually able to take the legs and kind of move them a little bit if I had to. And then, again, 8 weeks of working on it, right? So as long as you wet it down, wrapped it in plastic, came back to it, it was fine. I could continue to work on it. I could add stuff to it. It was nice and fresh. So so I did basically, you do about 98% of it complete before you start taking it apart, because you have to go back and touch it up after, obviously. So anyway, it was on here, right? On this board. I didn't put it on the clay slab yet, right? That clay slab came afterwards. That came after I took it off and carved it out. Then I put it on the clay slab. So
Do you see any attachment lines on the body at all from where you sectioned it to hollow it
where I
out?
cut it,
Mhm.
no. And
Like to your eye, can you
right,
tell where your seam line is?
and I've looked, you know what I mean? I've you know, put the glasses on and really looked, and you know, I think my biggest fear was that those were going to be stress points. You know what I mean? Where they were, and Emily and I kind of discussed it about, you know, where the cuts were going to be made and where, you know, it was going to have the least amount of stress on it. One of the things that was difficult, that in hindsight, the next time I do one, is getting this off of this metal structure, right? Because the structure isn't going anywhere.
Right.
So sometimes, like for instance, one of the things that I separated was the head. Right? So we cut the head with a wire, and we sliced under the chin, and we came around the back here. Okay. So it was basically all around here. We cut that, worked this, pulled that off. Okay. So now you can imagine there's this metal piping coming up, sticking out. So in order to get to the next section, you have to remove that piping and unscrew that piping. I put it really tight, thinking, you know, not knowing that I was going to eventually have to take it out again, right? So you take that out, and then you can, you know, move on to onto the next section. The hardest part was getting this area here out because it had a little T. So the metal went like this, and there was a T there where the dowels went down into the legs. So to try to get that out without damaging it was a little difficult, and I'm not so sure I needed that. Okay. What else? I think I cut them. I cut it here. I cut the legs off here. Now the other thing is, as you're cutting this, it's still got to stay up on its own. It still has to remain standing as you're taking it apart. So I cut the belly in two different sections here. So this kind of rump here in the legs was staying up on its own. Even after I pulled this off and was able to get in and hollow this all out, and then come in here and start hollowing this out and pulling it off, pulling out the dowels. So the thing is about putting it together. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but putting this thing together, Emily said, you really want to do it all in one sitting. Okay, so when you start cutting this thing up, you got to cut it up, hollow it out, put it all back together one shot. That's the best chance of it going back together without area. Because think about it, you take this head off, you hollow it all out, it's going to dry out a lot quicker than if it was solid. Right? So if you leave an area solid, you got stuff dried out, you'd have to really make sure that that area is not going to dry out too much. If it's another week before you get to it.
How long did you have it as a solid form? You said as long as you sprayed it and covered it well. You said what, 5-6 weeks?
Well, actually, the 8th week is when I cut it and hollowed it out. So for 7 weeks, it was a solid mass, right? And
all that solid clay probably helped keep that moisture as well. But the surface of it, as soon as you hollowed it out, it dried up like a sponge.
And the nice thing about this and the timing of it was, as the weeks went by, this was all setting up pretty good. You know what I mean? And it started to set. It was still workable, right? I could still put the designs in it and, you know, mess with the fur and things like that. But it had started to stiffen up a little bit, maybe like leather hard. But the inside is still fairly soft, right? Because it's solid. So again, taking it apart. Oh, the other thing I did, which I kind of thought of, was I said I used the 950 hand building clay on this, right? Well, at the time I'm thinking, well, he's going to take a couple bags of clay. So, you know, I'm buying the clay. I figured, let me just buy a bag of recycle. It's cheaper. And a bag of the 950. And the bulk of it was the recycle. So the first layer of, you know, the whole thing was basically recycled clay.
The core of it, right.
And then I did probably about I don't know, 3/4 to an inch of the hand building clay over that, right? So I had this veneer of hand building clay over the whole thing. And so that made sense to me, you know what I mean, to do it like that, because I'm going to carve all that stuff out. Probably, you know, it's all going to be scrap anyway, and you're going to have to reuse it. So, you know, why waste the hand building clay? That was my theory.
Did you have any troubles? Any benefits from it?
No, the benefit to that was, so this is what was good about it. Not only the fact that I was like, well, you know, cheaper clay and the core that's getting all carved out, but I was able, as I'm carving it out and hollowing it out, I knew when I was getting close to how thick it was, you know? So otherwise, I could have gone too deep if it was all the same clay. There could have been areas that were thinner and thicker, and, you know, if you know pottery at all, it's all about evenness, right? If you got an area that's really thick, another that's really thin, it's going to dry differently, and that's where it starts pulling away and, you know, and cracking. So I was able to gouge it out, and I'd say, oh, I'm down to the hand building clay. I knew I was there. So that was nice. What else? Let's see.
I was going to say, we can go to our photos to show the process of Robert building this. So give me just a few moments. I'm going to stop our video, but we're going to get ready for a little slideshow, and Robert will walk us through this here. So just give me one moment to switch over here.
Yep. Okay, so as you can see now with the pictures here, you can see how it's mounted to the board. Okay, roughed it all out. Pretty much got you know, the basics done on there. It's a front shot. Started to add some, you know, detail to it. So again, the nice thing about this is you can kind of take your time. You know, you can start adding detail and then work on other areas, and I think that's one of the things I liked about it. This is a little shot of the rear leg. On the feet, what I did is I put black slip. Okay, so I knew that the hand building clay was going to, you know, probably come out toasty or more brown. I figured some of the grog would show through. So I wanted the feet to be, you know, different. So the feet and the face I did with black slip. Originally, when I made this, the intention was to fire it in the gas kiln, in the downdraft gas kiln at Wesleyan Potters, which would be a reduction atmosphere. And the slipped areas would be much more matte than what it came out like. So now here you see the finished. All the black area around the face and the fingers have a sheen to it, you know, it was shinier than I had anticipated. Reason being is that it was fired in a wood kiln. So the wood kiln, having the fly ash from the wood, is building up on the piece. So a lot of the sheen, pretty much all the sheen from this was from the wood ash, the iron, and reacting with the clay. So, you know, when I got it out, I mean, I'm very happy with it. I would have liked to have seen these areas that are kind of glossy a little bit more matte, and that was the intention. But COVID happened, and that was like right at the during the break, and Emily was going to fire it at the gas kiln, and everything got shut down, and that was it. So I picked it up, and I brought it up to Canton, and I threw it in the wood fire. Actually, you could see right on the nose there, some of that right on the top of the nose. That's some deposit of ash, of wood ash, depositing on the nose. I think actually, if I remember correctly, I might have threw a little bit of ash on there, blew a little ash in his face. The eyes, I intended on the first one I did the eyes in Ohata. So again, in the reduction gas kiln, they came out that nice orangey kind of look that the Ohata gives you. These I did in another glaze and for what I had, and you know, they came out pretty good. I was happy with them. Okay, this is the old guy. Okay, you can see the proportions are really off, and you know, but his eyes are Ohata. Okay, so anyway.
I want to get a close-up shot of both these guys again. So we'll go to our first one.
Yeah,
here.
so here, let me
Bring this
show you
perfect.
this one here. And again, if you get a close-up, you can see the cracks. Look at these big cracks going all the way down, right? Yeah. You know, you look at it, proportions are completely off. I actually, as I was looking at this one, I thought it kind of looked like a youth, you know, like a baby girl, because, you know, everything's oversized, the real skinny arms hasn't developed yet or something. So that's how I kind of look at this one now. This is the youth version, okay? So now in the future, okay, so progression, right? So now I'm thinking in my head, what next? What's the next one, right? I did them both kind of the same stance and everything. And so I'm thinking the next gorilla, or maybe it won't be a gorilla, maybe it might be a baboon or something, you know, like in the primate family. And it could be in different positions, you know, as you're looking through all these pictures, you see, you know, the gorillas, they just, sometimes they're just hanging out. They got all these interesting poses that they do. So I think that may be the next progression for the next one I do. The other thing I was thinking was, again, this whole thing was hand building clay. I made all the marks on them. I did iron oxide wash, put it in the wood kiln. I think next time I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do like maybe a brown slip or gray or something, like a slip over the whole thing before I start giving it texture. Because then what's gonna happen is it's gonna be more two-tone. You'll see the hand building clay underneath the slip, and on the raised areas, it's gonna be the raised, you know, it's gonna be the color of the slip, right? So here you can see on the back, some of the hand building clay showing through where I wiped the iron oxide off a little bit more so than I did anywhere else, right? So that brown speckling was from the hand building clay dominating and showing through with no iron oxide. Right? Yeah, so I think that that's going to be the next step. You know, the next step is finding a nice maybe gray or black slip, putting it on, carving through it. You know, maybe they'll get fired in the gas reduction again, and it'll be different. This came out a lot browner than I thought. You know, my son named it Harambe after he gave it a name. I called it Harambe Brown because not only, you know, you look at it and you go, oh, color, it's brown. Actually, it was a buddy of mine, one of my best friends, who passed away a couple years ago, and he had a tattoo of a gorilla, it's almost the same position, you know, kind of like that, on his leg, and so it was like a little kind of shout out to him, tribute to him. So, yeah, those are the things that I like about it, the things that I learned from it, and you know, with ceramics, it's a progression. You know, I'm going to do, I think, a series of maybe gorillas again. Maybe I'll do an orangutan. Maybe I'll do a chimpanzee, something, and kind of keep going, because every time you do it, you get a little better. You learn a little bit more. You know, you figure something else out to improve it. And, you know, who knows, maybe 2 or 3 more down the road, you know, they just keep getting better.
In comparing the two,
Yeah.
obviously 2 very different techniques, would you incorporate any techniques from the first one and second one? Do you feel like your second one is more successful by building solid?
Let's see, would I incorporate the 2? I don't think so. I'm not saying that I would never do that again, okay, that type, because, you know, when Pat Simon taught this workshop, I mean, she could just do stuff that was like, she'd roll out on the wheel, like splayel out this pad and take a rib and hold it down, and it would all fold up, and that would be like skin, you know, on an elephant ear or something. And it was just like she would do these things, and or, you know, you could throw cylinders and, you know, attach them like that. And so there's lots of different ways that you can achieve things. I think it's just a matter of, you know, really what you're comfortable with, what works for you.
What works for your content, you know?
Yeah, you know, I think you might be able to get a lot more realistic and detailed maybe in this manner. Maybe that's true, not true. When you're doing it with slabs or throwing pieces and you're attaching them, you can be a little bit more, I think, like suggestive. You know, the suggestion of an ear or an eye or skin or something like that. And, you know, not be so literal, you know. So I did a teddy bear early on before the gorilla. This was my kids weren't born yet, and I did a lamp for them. And same way, slabs, the legs were, you know, slabs rolled up into coils. Came out pretty good, you know, didn't crack. So that was a good thing.
That's always a big feat right there.
And I think that just made the attic. You know, my daughter it went from my son's room to my daughter's room, and now she's, you know, a teenager, so it got put away.
Oh, no.
So, but that's okay. I figured, you know, as long as like it's not in, you know, tax sale next week for $10, then I guess I'll be okay.
We'll save it, you know, maybe in the future you'll have a grandchild to give it to. So you definitely want to hold on to that.
Right.
I think we're.
So you want to maybe open up to some questions or something?
Would you like to view? I know a lot of people have their cameras off, which is absolutely fine, but we'll open up to the students here. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in and.
Maybe just state your name, so because I may know you and know who I'm talking to. You know?
Yeah.
So because I can't see you.
Anybody have any questions?
Or just to say hi?
Or just to say hi? How's it going?
Pat Simons. Sorry, I guess I don't have my picture properly set.
Did you that say that's Pat Simon?
Pat
Yeah.
Simon.
That
Yeah.
says,
How are you, Pat?
hi.
Oh, good to hear from
Sorry,
you.
I'm not as good on the computer as I am with animals. I apologize.
It's perfectly okay. That's why Natalie is behind the scenes, because that's above my pay grade. Yeah.
Mine
So
too.
nice to hear from you. So, so what do you think?
I'm still a big proponent of foam to hold the bottom up rather than the metal thing. I think for
Putting
us
foam
non-structural engineers, foam works pretty well with, and the sticks going into the slab of clay to hold the legs in place. And sometimes I put a piece of clay around the bottom to hold the toes where I want them to be, so they're not going to move while I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit more still in the gesture part than you are. You know, that the gesture of the creature is still really important to me, and
Yeah.
that's what talks to me about pieces.
Yeah, and I love that about when when you were here. Like I was saying, it was just so great. I didn't even realize you were on. It was fantastic, because you would just do something and it would be, and you're like, I think I remember like I was saying, on the wheel, and it looked like elephant skin, know, and it was great how you did that.
Yeah.
So.
And we still have one of Pat Simon's pieces hanging in the Wesleyan Potter's office. Unfortunately, with COVID, we can't have people come in, but you can see it from the window space. So if someone's in and they're wondering what the piece looks like, we'd be happy to point it out. It's a wonderful slab relief sculpture of an elephant. And it's like Pat just knew the right way how to fold a slab of clay to have such an expression on this elephant's face. It's one of my favorite pieces, and Liz Blondin's favorite pieces here in the office.
Yeah.
One of the problems, Robert, I think you're going to run into with the black slip and is the time element. You know, when you're wetting it down and then trying to work the next day or so, you're going to have to deal with the problem of the water with the slip.
Right. Like trying to wet it and keep. So here I was able to do it over a period of time, the detail. Whereas once the slip's on there, and I'm trying to re-wet it, work it. Yeah,
I think you're going to run into a problem with it, but maybe not. Maybe it'll be a new adventure.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because I didn't really think of that. I didn't really think of like how long it took to add the detail over time.
Right.
Where, it would be one thing if I could slip the whole thing and then do all the detail, in an hour later. Yeah, in a timely fashion. But or maybe even doing the detail and then doing a light wash of slip or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you might even try firing it once and then adding some slip, seeing what happens then. And then refiring it.
That could be it. Yeah. I was a little nervous when it went in to the kiln.
Oh, for sure.
Especially, I mean, even the gas kiln, I was going to be nervous, but then the wood kiln, that kind of that steps it up. The percentage of things that can go wrong in there are escalated. So.
Exponentially, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, boy, that was a nice surprise, Pat. I'm glad that you chimed in here. That was nice. So,
Well, thank you.
anything, anybody else that has
Yes,
questions?
this is Susan Bement,
Hey,
Robert.
how are you, Susan? Good to hear from you.
Is Pat Simons the one who's from Rhode Island?
Yes,
You're from Rhode Island?
Because-
Yeah, you
I-
moved to Rhode Island, right?
I was in Rhode Island. I'm now in California.
Right,
Oh,
right.
wow. I took a class from you. I made a cat that kind of looks like a dog,
Aha.
but I thoroughly enjoyed it. That's where I met my twin, Marcia, who was born the same day as me, and she had cancer at the time.
Uh-huh.
She is a key member at the pottery.
So, Pat,
Anyway, I'm glad to hear your voice again. I'm glad to see you, Robert.
nice to hear you. So, Pat, are you still doing workshops and stuff, or?
I think I gave my last workshop in November of last year.
Yeah.
My hands aren't as steady as they used to be, and they're not doing quite as well as they were before. I'm 84. What do you want from me?
Hey, that's all right. You're 84 years young, right? I tell you, they take a beating. I tell you, my hands are, they're sore every day, but
Yeah. But it's a good store.
it's a good sore. Right. Yeah. So,
I had a question as well.
sure.
So I don't know if you remember, but I had done, the lady here.
Wow.
But the biggest challenge with doing animals, like you mentioned, was trying to control the color on your gorilla. And gorillas, fortunately, tend to be somewhat glazed-like colors. So for hand building, it makes a lot more sense for sculpture anyways, to be using underglaze, but then you're kind of like limited to cone 6 because underglaze won't survive at cone 10. So is there any way we can, I know I've done a couple where I actually put them through the raku kiln
Yeah.
to try to keep the temperature down.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to be able to get like cone 6 for hand built sculpture stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Some of the underglazes will be okay at cone 10. There's some that are more sensitive and they'll burn out.
But the truth is,
Velvet is a pretty good underglaze.
most of the underglazes that you want for good colors are based on some form of red or yellow, and they'll burn out. Right? It's really only the cobalt glaze. The cobalt will survive anything. It just doesn't care. But everything else will burn out at cone 10, or at least, it's totally unpredictable, and you spend weeks working on something, and then
Not worth it.
out. Yeah. So, if you luck out, you're in a little cooler spot in the kiln, maybe it survives, but it's not predictable. So you're still back to trying to do cone 6.
Yeah. Well, the cone 6, being that it's electric and it's an oxidation atmosphere, you're taking that factor, the reduction factor out of it. You're bringing the temperature down. So yes, it is more predictable, reliable. You're pretty much going to get these colors that what you're going to get. I've been experienced too at my place. It's a cone 6 oxidation studio, and a lot of people are buying underglazes to do stuff, and even some of the slips and stuff that we're making. You fire them at a lower temperature, they look different than they do at cone 6. They change. They just don't look the same. Not to say that you can't bring them up to that temperature, they just change. They look darker, or they actually could even change color. But yeah, it is much more predictable and reliable.
And you also
the thing is, wood fire, the thing is, about wood is, you are putting your faith in that kiln, there's a certain amount of, it's nice to, when you open that kiln and open it up, and you know your heart's kind of going like this because you're thinking, oh, it's either going to be yay or nay. And sometimes when you get them out, they're just exactly what, you know, more than what you expected. And then there's other times where it's disappointing, you know. Yeah.
Well, with the wood fire, I mean, for doing sculpture and wood fire, you got the unpredictability that you have to explain to people afterwards that you actually did it in California, and the smoke from the atmosphere all settled on your piece. And so that's why all the horizontal surfaces are sort of like kind of matte color, you know, as Pat would know.
Yes, yes.
Or actually, to tell you the truth, Pat, you realize we're mad at you because like today, it looks like it's about to rain. And it's like completely overcast. There's no shadows. Haven't been for 2 days. And it's literally just the smoke from you're sitting smoking out in California. So.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
But yeah, it would still be nice to be able to get you know, cone 6. I suppose I should probably phone you, Rob, and bring stuff down to the other place.
Yeah. You could call. You know, I mean, you know, we work something out. It's obviously, you know, things are slowed down, so
yeah,
got time.
One thing I will mention about using electric kilns for firing your sculptures and even for just bisquing it is you really have to consider what your studio has for a size electric kiln. Making sure whatever you're building is going to fit in one of the kilns for at least a bisque firing, and if not a glaze firing it as well.
And in fact, Rob knows that I did. Somebody named her, but I did a piece with a woman who was kneeling, and started out. I made her 28 inches tall, so that she would shrink the 2 inches to fit in the kiln at Wesleyan.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yep.
You gotta.
The problem with raku, Michael, is the it's so breakable after you finish because it's at such a low temperature, and so you spent all this time on, you know, the sculpture and the painting, and then here is the fragility of it. So good luck.
I know. Well, that's why I'd rather do cone 6 than cone 06, right? So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah,
I know last week we had another instructor, David Frank, with us, and he was talking about little tiny pinch pot animals, but he had talked about making a large statue of a chicken. He called it his 4-legged chicken, and he had coil built it. He built it from the legs first, then attached it to the body, and it was so big after he built it. It was about 6.5 feet after he built it, that he actually had to build a kiln where it stood to be able to fire it and bisque it. He didn't end up glazing it, but he said he caught up to, I think he said cone 5 with the kiln that they built around this large chicken sculpture. And right now it resides in a permanent home, but he would travel with it in the back of their pickup truck to different art shows, and it'd be like the local attraction. Kids would get on top of it. We should be able to post that video from last week's discussion as well as this discussion on the Wesleyan Potters YouTube channel. So if anybody says that they had missed this opportunity, that they are welcome to look out that on YouTube. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand the video over to Robert because it looks like we got a couple of sharing options here. So I'm just going to.
I was just going to mention quickly, since we're talking about chickens, if you remember the Japanese woman that was at Wesleyan, moved down to North Carolina. Kunye, right. So this is a chicken done by Kunye. I don't know how. I think she fired it at cone 10 at Wesleyan. And I'm just holding it for my daughter-in-law who happens to like chickens.
Let me see. She, yeah, hold it up to the camera a little bit more. I don't know. That's. It might have been cone, Ted. Can you see can I see the bottom of it? Like flip it up.
It looks
Uh,
like terracotta.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks like terracotta, and she probably did like a Majolica kind of wash and colors to it. Yeah, that looks low fired. Yep. Yeah, it looks like terracotta. Yep. So, yeah, nice to see you, Pat.
I finally figured out to hold up my phone. That's my computer is not showing my picture.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I'm gonna, I've been throwing now for, I don't know, probably 20 years. So I've been doing a lot more throwing than sculpting, but I keep getting pulled back into the sculpting end of it, and I definitely want to keep on going with that. Incorporate. I did some face jugs too. I started doing some face jugs, and I really like some pictures with the faces on them, and so that was nice because I can kind of incorporate the both. I could throw a piece, and then incorporate some of that sculpting aspect into it, which is nice. So it's the best of both worlds, and they're kind of functional, even if you don't use them. So, yeah. Any more questions before we wrap it up here? All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and appreciate it. And I'm sure check for more, right?
Yeah,
Natalie,
we'll keep everybody posted about our upcoming events. Right now, we are trying to organize a couple of panel discussions for the month of October, talking about pricing points for your pottery, weaving, or jewelry, depending on what your preferred medium is in the studio. We will have a few members join us and talk about quality of work, what makes good work, and suggestions on pricing each section of them. So we will keep you in tune with details in the next week or so with an email to follow.
Nice. Yeah. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is trying to figure out how to price your work. Difficult.
It's always a good question.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you
Okay.
all for joining us. Thank you, Robert, for bringing in your work.
Yep. No problem.
Awesome job.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay, folks.
Robert.
Thank you.